So that was my fault. I went off the rails. So before we go into any deeper details, and the first shoe, the only shoe to hit that leads us into the 30-minute mark, which is going to give us a much more in-depth discussion, is the AE2s. Now, this photo right here, and I'm gonna be honest with you, much more detailed than the sample. Because if I pull up the sample of the AE2s, and I'll pull it up after we get deeper in the conversation, the AE2, this photo gives me hope that this is a great continuation from the AE1. The AE1, I called it when the shoe first dropped. This was Sneaker of the Year. So that means, since it was Sneaker of the Year, that the AE2 has a lot of hype to live up to. And even then, it has the opportunity to create a repeated situation of giving Adidas a chance to making sure that at the end of the day, they are going to get a great second shoe. Now, let me go back a second. Because like I said, I don't want to rate it and the shoe actually be a disappointment when we haven't had a full photo of the shoe. But I'm pulling up the sample now. Like I said, I'm gonna let the sample lead into the 30-minute mark, just so that way if the camera cuts off, it's good enough for us to take a pause, switch the batteries, come back to the show, and then continue talking. But this was the original sample photo from last year of the AE2s. And if you compare the two, you could actually see like the big difference between how this shoe looks a little bit more like pretense of the shoe. But if you look at the inner part of the shoe, like where the black and the white meets closer to the to the toe of the shoe, that kind of gives you the Yeezy 700 feel. Now, I'm a sneakerhead, and I noticed the little details of multiple shoes as they, come together. But going back to the other photo, if you look back at the other photo, if you rewind back, you see that they kept certain parts from the sample that's on this photo. But at the same time, it's more or less contextually similar. Like, I'm glad this is a sample so we can see what we're looking into as far as the shoe. But when it comes to the actual shoe, and let me pull it back up from the actual preview, because like I said, I'm leading into the 30-minute mark, and prayerfully the camera doesn't just cut off at this moment. But when we get back to the actual shoe and the actual conversation of the sneaker, you can see that piece was still kept, and kept into the point that they are really trying to make sure they push the shoe even further, and keeping the idea that, okay, this is what we're going to release, and you already have a visual of this shoe. And I mean, like I said, I want the AE2s to succeed like the AE1s. Will they do it? We don't know. Only time will tell. But when it comes down to it, we want the AE2s to do, have their own storied legacy. So, let me say this. Let me pose the question. Do you think the AE1 sample did justice for the AE1s? Okay, let me rephrase the question. Because I messed up. Do you think the AE2, even with the sample photo, will have the same hype as the AE1s? I posted that question on the short because at the end of the day, it was an interesting question, but I feel like I wanted to know more about people's opinions, especially when you compare the AE1 to the AE2, and especially the sample photo of the AE2 from last year to the actual first look this year, because that is actually one of the most important things when discussing the AEs, and how more or less, and I say this in a more positive context, more or less how this sneaker might actually be a two-peat instead of one and done with the AE1s. But at the end of the day, it's still a sneaker that people are gonna actually buy and they can actually get without, hype beasts, just overkilling the hype market on them. But that's just my opinion. But please leave your answers to the comments below because, like I said, we're grateful for all 1,250 of y'all, and hopefully we get more subs because at the end of the day, I want to do more sneaker contests, especially with me trying to win way more sneakers now more than ever. And even then, you know, you just celebrate the moment that you're in and you live in that moment and embrace it. But needless to say, don't want to overexpose myself. I'm gonna pause this now. I don't remember the exact date of Yeezy brand and when it the first shoe dropped more or less, but I think we're already at the 10-year mark at least, and so